The next film I want to review is a film called The Unsent Letter, directed by an Indian filmmaker called Tadgata Mukherjee, and this was submitted under the category of experimental or art film. Having said that, compared to a lot of same category films that I've received, this was perhaps one of the more narrative-driven films, and I enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I did feel a bit of conflict with my decision-making for this film, because there were certain ties within the narrative that were quite close to experiences I've personally had in my own life and in my family. Nevertheless, the film is a story, a short film, about 10 minutes, and it's about a young Bengali woman who returns to her grandmother's house and is overflowed by memories of maybe her earlier life when she used to live there. And as she goes through this house and recalls her youth, her family, her grandmother, it becomes rather, I won't say melancholy, but emotional, and it gives you something to think about, and it's poetical, and it does rather suck you into her world, and you really feel for her and for her journey, and for her as a person now, as well as who she might have been in the past. So it is really an emotional journey, an inner emotional journey, and I really like the title, Unsent Letter. It is as if she was writing a letter that she never sent, and she's now sharing with us in this film, and it is powerful. I get why it was submitted as experimental and art. It could very well have gone in as a short film category. There is a story there, and there is a story that concludes, and that gives me as an audience a range of emotions. So in that sense, I really enjoyed it. It's difficult to criticize such a thing because it is very personal from her perspective, and in the same way as you can't really judge art, how can you judge someone's personal feelings about something? You can have an opinion, you can interpret it a certain way, but you can't really judge it as such. So really what I'm left with is to say, for my personal taste when watching a film, I felt that it was a little bit slow in the build-up process. Maybe it had to be slow, but for someone who does not know her story, her life, or the objective in the film right from the beginning, the slow element initially created or caused some intrigue for me, but then I started to think, where is this going? It does conclude in a more satisfactory way. It does give you certain answers that it raises early on, but it does also keep a very low profile. And I'm starting to think, yes, it works in a personal, emotional way. Would it have worked even better for me as an audience if it had been more deep in certain areas, more expressive of certain things, and if maybe she had dug into a particular memory a little bit more, and really evaluated what that meant to her, so it felt a little bit generalized as opposed to pinpointed on something specific. Obviously it pinpoints the return into this house, but aside from that, it does give a rather general overview. Gosh, I repeat, it's no easy task to criticize in any way such a personal short film, and for what it is, I really enjoyed it. But again, as an audience, maybe a little bit more in certain areas would have triggered something else in me, and made me feel a different way, and maybe a little more melancholy, or maybe a little bit more empathetic for her and for the story. Nevertheless, wonderful film. I would recommend anyone to see it, especially anyone who's recently or will plan to go and visit a childhood home they haven't been to for a long time. Obviously, anyone of Bengali, Indian, or South Asian origin will have a lot to pick out of it. And I did really enjoy it, so thank you very much for the submission of the Unsent letter. Honestly, I enjoyed it. Picking out criticisms is a very difficult task, but there you go. I hope this will, encourage you somewhat, and ultimately, hopefully, you can keep on making great films like this. And if you can, every time poke the audience one bit more, one bit extra with your content. This is one of the most perfect starting points, and then the next level, you poke them a little bit more and you trigger maybe a tear or something like that. I think you're on the path to being an absolutely fantastic filmmaker. So well done, and thank you again very much for submitting this film that I really, really, truly enjoyed and felt emotional for.